advance the slide there, Colleen. And I'm Todd Smeltz. As Jesse introduced me, I'm a project manager with Erdman Anthony, and we were contracted by Montgomery County to perform the alternatives analysis, which I'm going to go through here, and then advance the project through design. So I'll start off with just a project location to get everyone oriented. I have the county maps up there on the upper left-hand corner, and then zoomed into the project. The existing bridge crosses Wissahickon Creek, which is flowing from the top of the screen down. West Valley Green Road crosses in a west to east direction across the bridge. The Wissahickon Valley Park is to the north, and there's parkland and trails to the south. Go ahead and advance that slide. So one of the first things we do in scoping and developing a project through the process is we have to develop the purpose and need for the project. And it was determined that the purpose of the project is to improve the safety of the crossing at Wissahickon Creek and provide access for vehicular traffic, including EMS vehicles and school buses. And just to give you an idea of weight, an EMS, I think the larger fire trucks are in the 38-ton range, and school buses, I think, range up into the 20s. So, currently the bridge is posted at 3 tons. So the needs of the project, the existing bridge is structurally insufficient. As I said, it's posted for 3 tons. It's in poor condition. I believe it's on a 6-month inspection schedule. But the inspectors go out and, seems like every 2 or 3 cycles, they find something that needs to be fixed and the bridge has to be closed, and significant funds get put into getting the bridge reopened again back to that 3-ton weight restriction. The bridge is also geometrically inadequate. It's the bridge itself is narrow. I think it's 18 feet from truss to truss. It carries 2 lanes of traffic on that 18 feet. The approaches are also insufficient in width. And then the vertical and horizontal geometry of the roadway is insufficient. And that leads to sight distance issues. As cars approach the bridge, they can't see vehicles that are on the bridge. There's a house that is located immediately adjacent to the southeast quadrant of the bridge that really restricts sight distance. So there are definitely safety concerns due to the geometry of the roadway and the width of the bridge. So we developed 7 alternatives that we studied for the project, and I'm gonna have Jason talk through the environmental process that we go through. But just to open up to give you the idea of the alternatives that we looked at alternative 1, which is a no build or do nothing. And I'll go into details of what the pros and cons of each of these as we advance through the presentation here. Alternative 2 is a rehabilitation. Alternative 3 is a replacement of the bridge on the existing alignment. Alternative 4 is the replacement of the bridge on a new alignment, but it's in a similar location to the existing bridge. And I'll be showing you plans that'll hopefully clarify these descriptions. Alternative 5 is rehabilitating the existing bridge, but constructing a new bridge immediately adjacent to it, and essentially producing a one-way couplet where each bridge would be carrying one direction of traffic. Alternative 6 and alternative 7 are replacements of the new bridge on completely new alignments, one to the north of the existing bridge and one to the south of the existing bridge. So I'm going to turn this over to Jason just to go through the environmental process.
Thank you, Todd. Yeah, so My name is Jason Vendetti. I work with AD Marble. We are leading the environmental clearance process for this project. So just next couple of slides, I'm going to run through just the general environmental process that we're going through. So the project has to go through what's called the NEPA process. That's the National Environmental Policy Act process. And that is due in large part because there's federal funding associated with this project. So NEPA is an umbrella act that covers a wide range of resources, from natural resources such as wetlands, waterways, threatened and endangered species, to cultural resources, to socioeconomic concerns. The next slide there. So for the West Valley Green Road Bridge project, we're going to prepare what's called a NEPA document called a category exclusion. And it applies to category exclusion because there essentially aren't a lot of resources out in the study area, but there are several key resources. So I'm going to go over those. As Jesse mentioned in the beginning, the bridge itself is historic. So that is really one of the primary key resource in our study area. It's eligible for listing in the National Historic Places Register. So that is why, and it was determined eligible years ago. So that is a key resource we need to evaluate throughout the entire environmental process. We also have a couple recreational resources in the transportation world. They're also called Section 4F resources. So we have the Fort Washington State Park and the Green Ribbon Trail, and I'm sure you're all familiar with both of those resources that are in the project area. There are a few resources that are to be determined: archaeology resources and threatened and endangered species. There's some additional work that'll need to be done in the next phase of the project to determine whether those resources are present in our project area. We'll go next slide. The Section 106 process. This is essentially the cultural resource process. So here we've done some initial studies. Several years ago on this project, we did a historic resource survey study of the entire project area. And we also did some very preliminary archaeology studies, basically just background research. So again, as mentioned previously, the bridge is historic. That is the only historic resource in the project area. So basically, the next steps that we're going to follow, for the project are preparing a determination of effects report, and that will evaluate the impacts of this project on the bridge. And we'll also continue with the consulting party process that was initiated in, I believe it was 2017. And as I just mentioned in the last slide, we're going to conduct a phase 1 archaeological survey. That's where we'll actually go out and we'll put shovels in the ground and evaluate if there's an archaeological site in our project area. And then lastly, the project's likely going to result in what's called an adverse effect to the bridge. So we're going to have to go through determining historic mitigation stipulations for the bridge impacts. And I should note too that all these steps in the cultural process will be coordinated along with the consulting parties for the project. I'm going to turn it back over to Todd. You're going to go over all the alternatives.
Yes. So, okay, the first couple alternatives here, the no bill, do nothing, and rehab. I really don't have any graphics to show you for that. But so let's talk alternative one, which is one you always have to look at. Let's just do nothing. Let the bridge continue to deteriorate. And the advantages of that is it does maintain the existing bridge, the historic resource in its current location, but it has the obvious disadvantages. It doesn't meet the project purpose and need. We wouldn't be improving the capacity of the bridge. We wouldn't be improving any of the geometry. And the bridge would eventually be permanently closed to vehicular traffic. So if we would just let it in its current state of deterioration, it would eventually need to be completely closed to traffic. Let's go on to alternative 2. And Jesse got a little bit ahead of me in his introduction, but we did look at a rehab option, and the rehab option would maintain the existing bridge and minimize impacts to natural and cultural resources in the surrounding area, in the project area. But it has its major disadvantages. It does not meet the project purpose and need. The bridge would still need to be posted for a load restriction. There will be safety issues due to insufficient bridge width, horizontal and vertical roadway alignments, and the sight distances would not be improved. And carrying this out into the future, the bridge will require significant long-term maintenance to remain open. Let's go to alternative 3. Okay, alternative 3 is replacing the bridge with a new bridge on the existing alignment. And I don't know how well you can see through the reddish area there, which would be the new bridge. It sits directly on top of the existing bridge. The approach roadways, which you see in yellow, we would make some improvements to those, but tying it into that existing bridge alignment, there would still be some issues with the alignment. And down on the lower right hand of that graphic, the top section there shows you what we are anticipating for the width of the new bridge. The new bridge would carry two 11-foot lanes, and it would have 6-foot shoulders on each side, which would provide adequate room for bicyclists and pedestrians that would want to use the bridge. I want to go to the next slide with the advantages and disadvantages. So keeping the bridge, building a new bridge on the existing alignment would meet the project purpose and need. We'd be increasing the bridge capacity to accommodate vehicular traffic, including EMS vehicles and school buses. We'd be improving the width of the bridge and providing access for room for bicycles and pedestrians to access the bridge across the creek and get to the Wissahickon Green Ribbon Trail. And we would improve the existing flooding conditions over West Valley Green Road. The existing bridge is a 3-span bridge. There's 2 piers that are within the waterway or on the floodplain under the existing structure. The new bridge, we believe, will be a 2-span bridge, would have a little bit greater waterway clearance through the bridge structure, and would likely reduce the flooding that happens over West Valley Green Road on the west side of the project. It would still overtop, for major floods, but the lower floods, maybe the 5-10 year would stay, that the road could stay open. The disadvantages, though, of keeping building the bridge on the existing alignment, one, we'd be removing the existing bridge, which would have an adverse effect on that historic bridge. The horizontal geometry, although it's improved slightly, would not be. You still have some poor sight distance curves on the approaches to the bridge. Safety would remain a concern in the bridge approaches due to this alignment and the sight lines with that house on the southeast quadrant. And stopping and driveway sight distances, that's a design criteria that we look at and try to design for. We would not be meeting all those requirements. Let's go to alternative 4. So alternative 4 is we would replace the bridge on a new alignment, but it would be in a similar location to the existing bridge. So the red portion of the graphic there, which is the new bridge, you can see what we've done is we've essentially rotated it and changed the alignment of the bridge and also the approach roadways. This allows us to flatten the curves out on each end of the bridge, which helps with sight distance. Let's go to the advantages and disadvantages of this option. So advantages, once again, this meets the project purpose and need. We increase the bridge capacity to accommodate emergency vehicles and school buses. We improve the bridge width and provide bicycle and pedestrian access across the bridge. We improve all aspects of the existing bridge and roadway geometry, which improves the overall safety of the bridge above what the existing conditions are. and we improved the existing flooding conditions over West Valley Green Road, similar to the previous alternative. Disadvantages, there's not many for this option. One, we will be removing that existing bridge, and that will have an adverse effect on a historic structure. And we would have minor permanent right-of-way impacts to adjacent properties. The little bit of realignment that we have to do to those approach roadways by rotating the alignment of the bridge will have some minor right-of-way impacts. Let's go to alternative 5. This is kind of the outside of the box alternative, I would say. This is where we rehab the existing bridge, and the existing bridge would carry the eastbound traffic over the road, over the creek. And we build a new bridge north of the existing bridge, which would carry the westbound traffic. So we essentially create what we call a one-way couplet using two structures. And of course, the new bridge would not have to be built with two 11-foot lanes. I think we're showing it's to the left there, Colleen. Oh yeah, the one you were pointing at to the right. We'd have one 11-foot lane, and we'd have 6-foot shoulders on each side of that bridge, with for which allows adequate room for pedestrians and bicycles. So let's look at the advantages and disadvantages of this option. From an advantage standpoint, the existing bridge would be maintained, so we wouldn't be eliminating a historic structure. The new westbound bridge would have the capacity to accommodate vehicular traffic, including EMS and school buses. And when you look at EMS vehicles, with traffic control that in the need, if there's an emergency out there, all that traffic could be directed in both directions across the new bridge. So the capacity would be there for EMS access. And another advantage of this is the project could be built without a detour. In other words, you could keep traffic on that existing bridge while you build the new bridge, and you never have to have a detour in place during construction. Disadvantages. So there's building that new bridge to the north, we'd have significant right-of-way impacts and environmental impacts to the property on the west end of the bridge and Fort Washington State Park. They would be the most impacted properties with this alignment. Flood levels would be increased, and likely that's 100-year flood levels. And that's because we're adding another obstruction to the creek and building a new bridge upstream. The existing eastbound portion of the bridge will still be posted for a load restriction. There'll be safety issues due to horizontal and vertical roadway alignments and sight distances. And that's just because we're not really improving any geometry on that eastbound bridge, the existing bridge. And looking, down the road, that eastbound bridge, if it were to remain in place, will require significant long-term maintenance to remain open. Let's go to alternative 6. So we'll start with alternative 6 and alternative 7 are similar. They're just bridges being built on new alignments. So in this case, alternative 6, we'd be building a new bridge to the north of the existing bridge. So let's go to the advantages and disadvantages of this. First of all, it meets the project purpose and need. We increase the capacity to accommodate vehicular traffic, including EMS and school buses. We improve the bridge width and provide bicycle and pedestrian access across the creek. We improve the existing bridge and roadway geometry over what we have out there existing. The curves would be flattened, and we'd have better sight distances. And in this case, you could maintain that existing bridge for recreational purposes. So you'd be building the new bridge, but since you've built it on a new alignment, that existing bridge could remain in place. So from a disadvantage for this alternative, there'd be significant right-of-way and environmental impacts. And again, it's the same properties that we had in that one-way couplet option the property on the west end of the bridge and Fort Washington State Park, there'd be significant right-of-way takes in there. And flooding would not be improved. And I would go as far to say as if you keep the existing bridge in place, we could have increases to 100-year flood elevations because we've added another obstruction in the waterway. Let's look at alternative 7. So in alternative 7, we go to the south in this case. We build a new bridge on a new alignment south of the existing bridge. So you can see right away this new alignment on the east side pretty much goes right through that existing house that's out there. So let's just go to the advantages and disadvantages of this. Advantages are similar. Meets the project purpose and need, increases the structural capacity of the bridge, allows access for bicycles and pedestrians, improves all aspects of the existing bridge and roadway geometry, which improves the safety. It improves existing flooding conditions over West Valley Green Road. And the existing bridge, as with the previous alternative, could remain in place and be maintained for recreational purposes. The disadvantages, though, of this alternative, the major disadvantage is right-of-way and environmental impacts. The property on the east end of the bridge, like I pointed out, that alignment goes right through the house that's immediately adjacent to the roadway on the east side. So based on looking at those 7 alternatives, and we developed kind of like an alternative matrix looking at advantages and disadvantages. The design team recommends alternative 4, which is the replacement of the existing bridge on a new alignment, but a similar location to the existing bridge. So the footprint of the bridge, we rotate it slightly, but it's essentially in the same location as the existing bridge. Let's advance the slide there. So this recommended alternative meets the project purpose and need, provides bicycle and pedestrian access across the bridge, requires minimal permanent right-of-way takes to the properties adjacent to the bridge, decreases flood elevations, and minimizes permanent stream impacts. It improves the existing flooding conditions over the West Valley Green Road on the west side, but it would not have any increases to 100-year flood elevations that you have out there existing. It minimizes future maintenance costs. We design bridges now for a 100-year life. Now there is some maintenance that's involved in that 100 years, but it's much less than trying to maintain that existing bridge. And this is a little bit into the weeds from a design standpoint, but the way we lay out the framing of the bridge, it allows for future redecking while maintaining traffic on the bridge. So 50 years from now, 75 years from now, if the bridge needs a new deck, you can maintain one lane of traffic bi-directional on that bridge and build it in stages and replace the bridge deck. Just to give you an idea of the future schedule of the project on the design end. So we're having our public meeting this evening, in I say early summer here, 2023. After this meeting and after we receive input from everyone and respond, we'll be diving into preliminary engineering, which we believe will run through the winter of 2025. We would hope to have environmental clearance by the spring of 2025. And that's the that NEPA process that Jason highlighted in his few slides on the presentation. We would hope to have preliminary engineering approved by late spring of 2025. So after we get environmental clearance, we pretty much would be finishing up preliminary engineering through the remainder of 2025, but we could start to enter into final design. Final design, we would hope to have complete by the fall of 2026, and that would include all the right-of-way and utility clearances that would be required to build the job. We'd look to bid the job in the winter of 2027, which would allow construction to begin probably that next spring or summer of 2027, with construction complete by the end of 2028. I believe that concludes the presentation, and can look to start to answer questions.
Sure. Just as a reminder to everyone, I see some people populating the chat with some questions, so thank you for doing that. We'll run through some of those questions now. As Susan mentioned at the beginning, if we don't have time to answer your question during the presentation, we will be responding to all questions through the meeting minutes. So first question is regarding trout stockings. Will trout stockings be stopped during construction?
Let me take a stab at that.
No,
So
I got it, Todd. Yes, there's in-stream
You got it?
restrictions. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, March 1st to June 15th, there's in-stream restrictions, construction in-stream construction restrictions during that time period.
so that allows for trout stockings to go on as normal. The contractor's not allowed in the creek.
Yeah.
During that time period.
And I think it should be noted that when those restrictions are in place, that causes an organic delay in the construction of the project.
Thank you. There was a question regarding alternative 6, and will alternative 6 allow traffic to continue during construction?
Yes, I would say for alternative 6 and alternative 7, similar to that one-way couplet, which was our outside of the box alternative, you could maintain traffic during construction of those two alternatives.
Colleen, I'd just like to add, keep in mind, we are at a 3-ton weight restriction. So that is assuming that the bridge does not need to be closed as a result of the end of its useful life. So there is the possibility that if we went with one of these and the bridge ends up being inspected and the rehab or the repairs are significant, that it may be closed for the duration of construction. So yes, in a ideal world, yes, it will allow traffic to be maintained, but the reality is we got to remember that the bridge is nearing the end of its useful life.
Thanks for adding that, Susan.
Hmm.
There are a couple written comments in the chat. Those comments, project team will read through those. I'll jump to the question in that one chat as far as, has a recent traffic study been conducted? Todd, do you know the latest year of the traffic study?
Oh boy, I know we looked at this with the frequently asked questions. Susan, I don't have an answer for that, but do you know was there a more recent study?
I mean, the only thing we typically do is take traffic counts at the bridge. So I'm going to go see when the last time we did it was. Since I'm sitting in front of a computer, I can actually give the answer. If I had to guess, it's probably been a while, because with the 3-ton posting, we will not get an actual traffic count because we're limiting the vehicles that are allowed to cross that structure. But I will double check.
Okay, and as Susan is checking that, Todd, will trucks be prohibited from crossing the new bridge in keeping with the width and usage of the road?
Well, that will be up to, I guess, that'll be up to the county or White Marsh Township, I believe. If the bridge will be designed, it'll be a 40-ton capacity bridge, but the road could be posted to restrict that. And I don't know, Jesse, do you recall, didn't we say that would be a township led?
I believe it's a township-led agenda that would have to go through PennDOT for approval. I think Susan would know, though.
Right, because
I
we
guess,
are,
I guess the answer, yeah, go ahead, Susan.
since we are only the owner of the structure, the county only has the rights to post the bridge itself. And without having reason to, it's not enforceable. So the next best thing that can happen is a municipality can study the geometry of the road and based on that potentially restrict trucks from using it. But that is a study that is that would fall on the township.
Great. There seems to be a couple questions on alternative 4, so I'll address some of those now. Todd, you ran through the schedule a little bit, but if you can just reiterate how long construction for alternative 4 would be.
Well, I believe construction would start in the spring or summer of 2027. And it would be completed, we anticipate it to be complete, it would run through the remainder of 2027 and go through 2028 to the end of the construction season, which is in the fall. It should be done and open to traffic by the fall of 2028.
So would there be a detour in place for that entire duration?
I would say likely the first thing we have to do is it would be to demo the existing bridge, and that gets back into that whole trout stocking. You know, that's the initial part of the project. It might start up in the middle of that moratorium on getting into the creek because of the stock trout designation. So they might not get started till the summer of 2027 with any significant work out there. So I would say the detour would likely be in place early summer of 2027 and run till the end of construction. I mean, they may be able to get it open later in the summer of 2028 and just have cleanup work to do in the fall. But it would likely run, you know, through the winter of 2027, 28, right on to the end of construction.
Okay. Sticking with alternative 4, will a sidewalk be added to the road? Seems like there's concern because the bridge will be wider and there are concerns about pedestrian safety across the bridge.
Again, this goes back to how Susan described it. The county owns the bridge, and it's a bridge replacement project. If there's looking at sidewalks in the future, that would have to be a township-led project to do that. The 6-foot shoulders that we're recommending are actually wider than what the design criteria is, and we're widening those specifically to provide room for pedestrians and bicyclists across the bridge.
Again, sticking with alternative 4, there was discussion in the presentation about minor right-of-way impacts to adjacent properties. Can you maybe speak a little bit to that and when that would be known, when those impacts would, how much those impacts would be?
Well, I think with this graphic up, let's look on the east side of the project. You know, we wouldn't be
Oops, sorry about that.
Yeah, we wouldn't be impacting the house that's right there on the corner on the southeast quadrant. The alignment actually shifts a little to the north. So if you just look, if you can see the difference in the footprint of the new road to the existing road, we would need right of way up to the north. I call it a sliver take of right of way of that property up to the north. And then as we go over to the west side of the bridge, We're actually, the right of way that we need is in that floodplain area that is on the south side of the roadway. So away from the existing roadway. We need a little bit of right of way there.
And those are items that would be more detailed once you get into preliminary and final design.
Correct. Correct.
Another question
They would,
about,
let me add to that. Whenever you build a project like this, there's temporary right of way that may be required. We call them temporary construction easements. So there'd be some temporary areas that just allow the contractor to access, the construction site and the work he has to do. Those areas get all put back to their original condition when the project's done.
there's a question here about, again, staying on alternative 4. What would the height difference of the new bridge be at road level and overall?
Ah, boy, I don't have a profile to look at, but it's pretty much at the same elevation of the existing bridge. I believe on the west end of the job, we raised the roadway a little bit, which will help the flooding in that area, coming on the west approach to the bridge. On the east approach, I think it pretty much stays about where it's at. So the level of the new bridge deck should be similar to the level of the existing bridge deck.
And just a general question here, is the public allowed to submit a right to know letter request to obtain the most recent traffic study? And if so, who would they submit that to?
I can field that. The right to know request would go to the Montgomery County Right to Know office. I believe the information's online to know where that's directed to. I don't see why, if there is a study that's recent, we wouldn't make that public, but that certainly can be part of a submitted right to know request.
Thanks, Jesse. Question and possibly proposing another alternative here. Has any thought been given to moving the bridge south to where the old railroad bridge was or where the Planet Fitness is?
We did not look at that an alternative with that drastic of alignment shift.
Seems like there's some concerns about noise. Person indicates that they were told that the rumble strips in front of their house between Hunt and Creek would be removed once the bridge is replaced. Can we confirm whether this would occur or not? Seems like those rumble strips are a major noise nuisance.
My understanding that traffic control devices are authorized and controlled by PennDOT, not the county. So we do not have any say in traffic control devices.
However, Jesse, the rumble strips were placed in to provide a warning notice to the traveling public about the overhead height restriction. So being that it was a mitigation measure for that, which will be removed during construction, the rumble strips will no longer serve a purpose. So they will be removed, and the limits of paving will make it such that a smooth road surface will exist at the end of the project.
Thanks for clarifying. The individual who lives here is asking if there could be consideration to moving the roadway further from the house.
I think, if we continue to move on with this recommended alternative, I mean, we could look at seeing if there's any additional shift we can do to the north, and still maintain a reasonable curvature onto the bridge. and it can be evaluated. Yeah, this is still fairly conceptual, what we're showing here. So these alignments could be tweaked a little bit to provide a little bit more clearance to your house.
Question about traffic calming. Any thoughts on traffic calming measures associated with the project to ensure that the trail crossing the bridge and then the entire corridor is safe for road and trail users?
I know we've had some discussion of traffic calming. Again, I think this kind of falls back to the township and PennDOT. With it's somewhat similar to restricting the bridge to trucks. It would be that kind of study that has to go on to determine the need and the applicability of a traffic calming feature out there, whether it's I don't even know if I should say speed bumps or something. But they could be investigated. But right now, as part of the project, they're not being considered.
But just to clarify, early in evaluating alternatives, the county did look at moving the trail crossing from an at-grade crossing to beneath the bridge. However, due to the constraints within the project area, we were not able to provide the clearance needed to allow a bicyclist to continue on their journey under if the trail was to be moved below the bridge. So the height requirement just wasn't there. So it was looked at because we understand, I mean, safety, the safest thing for anybody is not to have to cross a road, but it just ended up not being feasible.
Moving through the comments here. There are a few people who have voiced that they are opposed to alternative 4, and they're wondering if we can let them know what governmental agencies will be involved in the approval process, so that residents can continue to provide comment and voice their concerns.
I would think, does Jason have the answer? I mean, there's a lot of agencies, but because of consulting parties, I think it would be better coming from Jason.
Yeah, there's many agencies involved in this, that where you can express your opinion. There's at some point we're going to get to preparing permits for this job where the Army Corps of Engineers gets involved. Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection will be involved in permitting. The Pennsylvania State Historic Preservation Office will be involved in the review of the cultural resource component of the project. So that would ultimately probably be the 3 primary agencies, I would think.
And will walking on the bridge be allowed in any of the alternatives? I believe the answer to that is yes, but Todd, I'll let you confirm.
Yes. And that's why we're providing the 6-foot shoulders on each side that provide room for pedestrians above and beyond what the design requirement would be. I think we'd only need 4-foot shoulders across here to meet design criteria, but we're looking at another 2 feet on each side.
Another traffic question. Do you know what the expected increase to traffic is on West Valley Green Road?
I don't think. Well, we don't know what will happen. If the road is open to trucks, what the increase will be.
I mean,
sure
the reality. Sorry, Todd. The reality is we're not adding capacity. We are adding width. but we're not adding like a third lane that would allow additional traffic. So it's not like more vehicles at the same time can cross the bridge. More vehicles will be allowed to cross the bridge because it will no longer be weight restricted, but it won't be, we can't predict that.
And are the alternatives that we showed tonight, are they going to be available on the county's website, or are they available online somewhere else?
They
They
are
will-
going to be.
Go ahead, Todd.
Go ahead, Susan. Well, this presentation will be posted on the county website. I believe the recording of this is going to be posted on the website also.
Correct.
And do you have estimated costs for these alternatives?
Let's move on to the next question. I'll see if we have a cost estimate.
And if we don't, we can we provide that in the minutes?
Yeah, let's do it that way.
A question about bank stabilization. Do you anticipate any efforts to shore up or stabilize the banks of the creek approaching the bridge?
Yes, we would provide rock protection mainly for scour at the abutments and around the pier. That likely, if there are bank stabilization issues that are beyond the project limits, that wouldn't necessarily be improved. But around the bridge, we would definitely have to protect the abutments and piers and the pier from scour.
So a few questions about the headache bars that are currently located there. Will those be removed?
Yes.
Yes.
Question about who makes the decision on which alternative is selected.
I would say that will fall to the county.
And in the traffic study, does the traffic study does that include just the number of vehicles, or is that also a speed study? Does it identify the speed of vehicles going through the area?
I don't know that I actually have it. Traffic counts. I don't have access to it right on my computer, so I would have to look. Typically, I do believe we study both. Obviously, we classify all the cars utilizing the bridge, and typically while we're doing that, we do collect the speed so we know what the 85th percentile is of the vehicles crossing our structures.
So question about how likely is failure of the current bridge during construction? Not sure if you can answer that.
That is a real open-ended question because it really depends on the weather plays a big thing. The winters play a big role in it. But the steel of the structure is significantly old, and it is deteriorating. The last inspection that was done, we had to do some mitigation measures just to keep the bridge open. So we're getting closer and closer to its potential closure. But to tell you when that'll happen, I mean, that we're just guessing.
Someone has a suggestion here, and this might be something to evaluate further in design. They would suggest looking into having just one lane for pedestrians that has a barrier wall to protect the pedestrians from vehicular traffic, similar to the Germantown Avenue Bridge in Chestnut Hill. The reduction in the cartway width would more than pay for the cost of this barrier wall and the sidewalks. Is that something that could be evaluated, Todd, or has that
We can
already been looked at?
evaluate. No, that's something that can be evaluated in preliminary design. There is criteria, and I don't believe we're at the length to protect a sidewalk. We might be in this case, but we'll have to look at the criteria that states when you need to add a barrier to protect pedestrians. It's kind of it's a unique question because you're protecting pedestrians with a barrier, but you're also at the same time making safety worse for the vehicular traffic. So it's kind of you have to look at it both ways, that the chance of a pedestrian being hit versus the chance of someone being injured by colliding with the barrier, and that weighs into that criteria. But it's definitely something we'll look at. It would be easy to do that if we picked a side for the sidewalk. Like if we didn't do sidewalks on each side of the bridge, just did them on one side. That's one thing we would have to look at.
Well, and to clarify, we can't provide a sidewalk because it would be a sidewalk to nowhere. So it is going
Right.
to be at the elevation of the roadway.
Right.
But yes, a barrier can be potentially considered during the design process as we move forward.
Yeah, we'll look at that.
Some questions about speed. Think we've heard some concerns about speeding along the stretch is a major issue. Is there anything that can be done to enforce this? I believe that's either a township or a state police issue, but if you guys could confirm that.
That is correct. The White Marsh
that is
Force
correct.
would have to enforce it.
Right. But at the same time, the roadway geometry, and let's look at alternative 4 here, it can handle greater speeds because the sight distance are improved, but the road will still be, I think the road's posted 25 miles per hour right now. That posting would still be the enforced posting of the roadway.
And would that 25 mile per hour speed limit be the posting for any of the alternatives?
Yes, I wouldn't see a reason why you'd want to increase the posting.
Question about, will there be a response to comments provided to the meeting participants or provided in the final decision document? We will be preparing meeting minutes to this meeting where we'll respond to all the questions, and that document will be placed on the county website. If you RSVP'd to Jason Vendetti, he has your email address and he can email out the meeting minutes to those who provided your email address to Jason.
I also remember I sent the comment forms as well that you can complete and send back. So if there's any, comments that are different than what we're reviewing right here, we would respond to those as well.
A question about, will we receive the environmental impact study? That document is a public document. So once that is approved by Federal Highway and PennDOT, that will be available for public viewing. There's a question about, there's a couple questions about AD Marble specifically. Not sure if those are really pertinent to the topic here, so maybe we can hold those for later, just asking what other projects AD Marble's completed in the surrounding area, and is AD Marble a public or a privately held company? So we can.
We're definitely a private company, and I don't know the exact number of projects we've done in the area, but we've done a whole bunch in Montgomery County for the county and for PennDOT. We've been in business for over 30 years.
A couple emergency service questions. If emergency service vehicles, excuse me, will emergency service vehicles be allowed on the bridge? And will there be restriction on use of the sirens? So I guess first part of that question, will emergency service vehicles be allowed on the bridge?
Yes, they will be on the new bridge. Yes.
And I don't think the project team here has anything to do with the restrictions on sirens. That would again have to be directed to White Marsh Township Police.
Correct.
Will school? Oh, Jesse, I'm sorry. Did you have something to add?
No.
Will school bus size be restricted on the new bridge?
No.
Question about who decided that emergency service vehicles and school buses needed to use the West Valley Green Road Bridge?
Well, we reached out to the local EMS, the ambulance, and the fire companies in the area of the bridge, and discussed, response times with them and concerns of, on the routes that they have to travel to get around this bridge, traffic issues and things like that. And then we also reached out to the school districts, and they expressed a desire to be able to use West Valley Green Road as part of their bus routes.
Comment about the traffic study, and depending on the date of that, would the team be revisiting that traffic study if it is dated?
The
Well,
bridge,
go ahead.
go ahead, Todd.
Well, I mean, the regardless what the traffic counts are, if there's a more recent study, the issue here is that the bridge, potentially needing to be permanently closed and maintaining a crossing of the creek for West Valley Green Road. I don't see any, increases in traffic volume. The thing that would impact is our roadway widths and things like that from a design standpoint. But yeah, we would definitely look at the new traffic study, but I'm not sure I don't believe that would have any influence on the need to replace the structure.
And just a time check here, it is 7 p.m. and the meeting is slated to go until 7:30. So we'll continue going through these questions. And if we run out of time, we'll answer the remaining questions in the meeting minutes. Question on whether any of the alternatives change the township boundary lines between Springfield Township and White Marsh Township. That would be no, the project would not. What coordination efforts would be implemented with other agencies to minimize additional construction sites in the vicinity of this location during the construction year?
Well, we'll definitely be coordinating with PennDOT. We will have to get an approved detour route if we go with an option that we need to remove the bridge as part of the bridge replacement. So that coordination with adjacent projects will have to occur to make sure that there's no conflicts with our detour through other construction zones, things like that.
again, a concern about the safety of children and increased traffic and traffic speeds going through the area, and just a request that the township and the county collaborate to provide a holistic solution and address impacted residents' concerns.
Okay.
Just a comment noted, we are in regular correspondence with the township.
Can you clarify whether with alternative 4 through 7, the level and height of West Valley Green Road would be raised approaching the bridge?
The level of West Valley Green Road on the west side will be raised, and that will alleviate some of the overroad flooding that occurs at lower storm events. On the east side, I think we're pretty much at grade to the way that roadway approaches the bridge now.
Well, and we would have to maintain the grade on the east side so that we do not adversely impact that house.
Correct.
Comment here about won't allowing EMS and school buses and bike truck traffic to come in as well. Are there any options to keep truck traffic out?
I believe we've answered that previously, that'll have to be coordinated through the township and PennDOT to see if they would consider posting the bridge, for no trucks.
Utility question here. Will the new bridge be able to have pipes to carry wastewater from the west side to the sewer main in Bethlehem Pike? Not sure if we know that answer yet. Todd, has any utility coordination happened?
No coordination has happened yet, but if there's a need for a utility to be on the bridge, and it would be under the bridge between the beams, that could be accommodated.
What type of bridge is under consideration? Will it have the appearance of the bridge nearby on Stenton Avenue and another reference to a bridge on Germantown Avenue?
Okay, what we anticipate, it's going to be a 2-span, either concrete beams, what we call pre-stressed concrete beams, or steel girders. We'll study both those alternatives. I'm not sure how that compares with the bridges on those other roadways, but there is a potential as part of mitigating. Let's say we do have to get rid of the existing bridge. There could be some architectural treatments, things like that, added to this bridge that would affect the appearance of the bridge.
And I'll go one further and say, given the actual location and the makeup of the project area, the county will can say that architectural treatment will be part of this project. So whether it be the concrete to appear stone faced, or look more like a weathering guide rail, so the brown coloring of the guide rail, it will be determined, but given the setting, it will almost 100% be implemented into this project.
And that could include, the even the colors, the beams themselves, the paint colors on those beams, that'll all be considered so that if a new bridge goes in here, it fits the setting that the bridge is in.
How will you accommodate those residents surrounding the bridge who have safety impacts and not being able to get to and from their homes with flooding when the road will be closed due to bridge construction?
We will definitely be looking at that with our traffic control. We definitely wouldn't make the situation any worse than what you have now. Like for instance, on that on the west side of the bridge there. If it overtops at a certain flood, we'd make sure that during construction, it's not overtopping at a lesser flood, that that access will be maintained.
And any closure that is anticipated, before construction begins, we have to have a PennDOT approved detour. So all those safety considerations go into that approval for the detour before the road would be closed.
Does the local community have a say in what option is selected?
That's one of the main purposes of the meeting that we're sitting here tonight, is to elicit feedback from the community so that the county is well informed of all positions regarding which alternative is ultimately selected.
Question about whether we've evaluated applying for a grant from DCNR to fund any off-site improvements. They reference sidewalks, but as we've already discussed, sidewalk would likely not occur, since that sidewalk would not be connected to another sidewalk. So is that something that the county looks at as far as applying for a grant from DCNR to fund any other off-site improvements specific to recreational benefits?
I can't speak for the planning department, but if something was available to better the situation through DCNR, I would trust that the Planning Commission would be looking into those alternatives. This group on the call tonight is, strictly focused on the alternatives for the actual bridge.
Well, we have had I believe we had a meeting in the past at the county where the Parks and Rec department were involved. So there'll definitely be coordination ongoing, for this project with the recreational interests of the county.
Will the stop signs be removed after the new bridge is installed?
The county doesn't have the right to enforce any of that, so with the installation of them, that will be made at the determination of the township.
Comment here, at some point there was discussion of trying to move the historic bridge to a new location. Is that still under consideration to mitigate the adverse effect on the bridge itself? Believe that would be something that would be covered during the Section 106 consulting party discussions. I believe some of you on the call here are also Section 106 consulting party. So once that meeting is held, that would be a question for that meeting.
Yeah, relocation has been pursued without much. There isn't a site hasn't been found at this time. I believe that still goes on, like Colleen's saying, through the consulting party process.
Vehicle traffic is low at the trail crossing due to the bridge restrictions. If the goal is to increase traffic, why is a separate traffic study required after the fact instead of considering the impact of the change at the time of replacement? This question was regarding traffic calming at the trail crossing.
Well, I mean, regardless of traffic calming, there'll definitely be signage in place, warning of the trail crossing. There's a potential that trail crossing might be raised also, like a raised pavement. And there is, current, I won't call it criteria, but there are guidance for pedestrian crossings like that we'll be looking at.
Specific property question here. Alternative 5 and 6 would significantly route the road into my property on the southwest side of the bridge and place the road up against the home itself. The designers appear to give that substantial weight and not recommending those designs, and design number 7, which goes through the other home. How much weight does the effect upon adjacent residential properties carry in the final decision on which design to use?
I would say it has a significant weight. For one, adds a lot of cost to the project, when it comes to major right-of-way takes, especially if there's residences involved and things like that. So it has a lot of weight in picking a recommended alternative.
Asking for some clarification on how the decision on the alternative will be made, what county committee or other entities are involved, and what steps will be taken to engage the public prior to this decision. So Jesse or Susan, can you guys maybe run through?
I mean, at this point, we have a recommended alternative. It is not anywhere near final at this point, but based on the information that our consultant has provided to us, this appears to be the most feasible option. We are here tonight to get feedback from everybody at this meeting to let us know which option they feel is correct. And prior to making the final decision, we will take all that information. I'm going to say digest it, because that's what we'll need to do so that we can make an informed decision. So this is the public engagement right now.
As far as the project need, someone's asking a question. They're wondering what the project need is that is driving this project.
Right up to that first slide there. It really comes down to, having a crossing over the creek that provides a safe access for the traveling public. The existing bridge is deteriorating and, will eventually need to be closed. And, there's a need to have a crossing of the creek here for West Valley Green Road.
Question about the alternative analysis report. Comment notes that the report was issued to a select number of individuals, and will that detailed report be made available? So I believe that report was submitted to the Section 106 consulting parties. So I believe that's what the person's referring to. Will that report also be placed on the county website?
I don't know that we can answer the question tonight. We definitely can consider that request.
Okay. Through some of the comments have already been answered, so I'm not going to ask these again. What is the legal standing of this proceeding? What legal standing do these comments or questions have?
Jason, do you want to answer that? Because this is part of the environmental, this NEPA process that we're
Correct.
following. We do have, we met, I think it was a month ago, we met with public officials on the meeting. And we usually have that meeting prior to a public meeting like we're having tonight, but the public meeting is part of the NEPA process. I don't know if you can elaborate on that, Jason.
That's correct. Yeah, this is part of the whole umbrella of NEPA. Like I said, we evaluate all kinds of different resources and reach out to the public to gather their opinions. Is exactly what we're doing here tonight.
Again, there's some repeat comments in the chat, so I'm just scrolling through these. If the west side of the roadway is raised, how does that impact access to the path into the park on the north side? Will this also be raised or a ramp implemented?
I believe because we're adjusting that profile on the west side, I think there'll be some trail realignment. I think the trail crossing might move a little further west than it is now. Potentially, I'd have to see where it lays out on the an existing alignment, but there will be some trail relocation required, most likely.
Has this project received an infrastructure fund grant or something similar?
I don't believe there's any grant money associated with this at this time.
Not to my knowledge, no.
Will you provide contact details for all the members who are responsible for this project at White Marsh Township, the county, and PennDOT? I believe that's something we can provide in the meeting minutes. Comment, please include this slide presentation in the meeting minutes and a link to the place on the county website where this and future documents regarding this project will be made available. Yes,
we can do that.
Those links will be
Yes.
provided in the meeting minutes. Will another meeting be held? And at what stage in the project will that public meeting be held?
I think we'll be making a determination on that based on, once we get a chance to review all these comments and answer them. If there would be a need for a future meeting, that would be accommodated.
Yeah, it's all based on need. I mean, there's nothing preventing us from having another meeting. But it's not mandated at this point.
Will there be a press conference and or press release for this project?
Again, that's to be determined. The department has really taken an active role in coordinating with the county's communications department to give the public as much transparency as we can on all of our roads and bridges projects. So I don't see why this would be any different. Whether it rises to the level of a press conference would be up to the communications department within the county.
What is the time window for submitting comments? Did we establish a date that individuals need to submit comments by?
I don't believe we did, but, Jesse, Susan, I mean, what are your, 2 weeks?
Yeah, I was gonna say that's typically what we give after a public meeting.
2 weeks from today?
So that would be July 26th.
Correct.
And then after those comments, Susan, you might have mentioned this before, after all the comments are digested, is there an expected timing of a decision on the alternative?
I mean, I don't even know how to answer. I mean, we have to get through the section 106 before we can say definitely what the alternative will be, because consulting parties do have a say in it. When we enter preliminary engineering, the alternatives will be further evaluated and therefore may lead to potential changes too. So the alternatives that you're seeing have not been, they're not 100% engineered, so there could be minor tweaks that happen. But so I don't know that I can give an exact answer, but once we get into preliminary engineering, it will be set shortly after that.
Couple questions about when will the meeting minutes be sent to the attendees, and will the meeting minutes have to be approved by the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners?
I believe we'd want to wait out the 2 weeks at least to get any more feedback. That will be included in an overall package of meeting minutes. So we'd be looking at, approximately a month, 5 weeks before those meeting minutes would be sent out to everybody.
What would be the next preferred alternative if number 4 is not selected?
That's a good question. Go back to the graphic there on alternative 4. There's a point I'd like to make. When we typically, well, I shouldn't say typically, in all cases, when we're looking at replacing a structure, ruling out, if we rule out no build and rehab, we look at minimizing the footprint of what is being built compared to what's there now. And this alternative has the minimizes the footprint of the construction while still improving safety, the curvature and stuff of the approaches. The other alternative that I would maybe rank as number 2, but this is just my opinion, would be, I think, alternative 3, where we replace it on the existing alignment. That has even less right-of-way impacts, and really minimizes the footprint of the construction. But it does not make the safety improvements that are being deemed, an essential component of the project. Just the site distances and you know, as you approach the bridge from either side, you still have very restricted sight distance, similar to what you have now, but you'll have a wider bridge, which will improve the condition. So I would say alternative, if I had to rank them, I would rank alternative 3 second, just based on the amount of the limited amount of impact that has to the properties adjacent to the project. I don't know if anyone else has an opinion. At this point, it's an opinion.
And probably the last question we'll be able to address this evening. Have the Friends of the Wissahickon or the Wissahickon Trail Organization and local groups which care for the trail system been contacted for their input on the project?
I am not sure about that myself, but I'd have to look back in some of the, this project has been going on for several years, so I'd
Yeah,
have to
we
look
can s-
back through some of our correspondence.
We can certainly look into that and potentially make an effort to reach out. Well, I see the time is 7:30. I want to thank everybody for your valuable input to this process. And I appreciate the respectful nature of the way the meeting was held, and the questions were on point. So thank you all. Have a good evening.